First, if you don't have air or electric impact wrench, you want to loosen the lug nuts while the car's on the ground. Then you want to jack the car up and support it with a jack stand. I like to use the Harbor Freight 6-ton jack stands because they have a bigger footprint, so that's more stability. And also still leave the hydraulic jack lightly supporting the car. I got my new power steering boot and the wire ties that came with it. Then you want to take the wheel off, and there's the boot, Das Boot. So what we have to do is the tasks is to remove the cotter pin, take off the castle nut, pop the tie rod end out. But before you do that, we gotta loosen it. And you either want to, when you turn this whole unit turns once it's out of the steering knuckle, and you want to either count how many times you turn it, or you can clean it really good and then spray paint it, and then when you put it back on, you have to line it up with where you spray painted it. I like to count it, and then you probably have to take it to get it front end alignment, which you should. Or you can do one of the, which I usually do, is use the tripod stands, and you have to have 4 of them, and you take a piece of string, and you can get it pretty good. You can get the adjustment in pretty good. There's thousands of videos on YouTube to show you how to do your own do-it-yourself front end alignments. So you want to hold this part here with a wrench, and then loosen this, the lock nut. I like to use flare nut wrenches whenever possible. Less chance of rounding the nut off. I like these wrenches. They say MIT. They're made by the Michigan Institute of Technology. I don't like using crescent wrenches. I think they were invented for plumbers. And it's about the only thing I use a crescent wrench on. So I hit the flare nut wrench a couple times. It's my favorite tool, and it loosened it up. So it's gonna be backwards. So you're gonna, right to tight, left to loose. So it's gonna be right to loosen. So you're gonna be turning this, you're gonna be turning it that way. What we have to do now is remove this cotter pin and the castle nut. Try to get them as straight as possible to get them out. Ah, there we go. Everything's to the right to loosen it because it's upside down. And you can hit this with a sledgehammer, this part here of the steering knuckle, and it'll cause this to pop out. But there really isn't that much. I mean, I'm concerned with hitting this, you know, the rest of the steering knuckle. I guess I could use the impact hammer, but if you unscrew the castle nut enough so the threads are protected, you can probably hit this with the sledgehammer and pop it up. You don't want to damage this too. They don't want to come out after they've been in there for a while. It's been their home for such a long time. There it is. It's up. So then unscrew the castle nut. Unscrew the castle nut the rest of the way. You gotta pop it all the way out. Hit it with a sledge. So now this is loose. Get my MIT wrench. And it's already loose, but I tightened it a little bit, which I probably shouldn't have. There. So now we need to count the turns that I turn this to get it off. So that's half. Oh, you know what? We gotta put a wrench on this. I think if we keep turning, it would unscrew from the other end of the tie rod. So that's half. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 18, 19, 20. So it's 20. I'm going to do the alignment on this anyway with the string alignment later. I won't show it, but so that's what the tie rod end looks like. Oh, and it's a Moog. Since it's one that you grease, it's probably been replaced already. It's not the factory. I like, whenever I get these, the ball joints or tie rod ends, when I have to buy them, I always get the ones that you can grease because they last a lot longer. So then I got to pull this boot off. See, that's if you kept turning this without holding it with a wrench, I think it would unscrew it from that, which you don't want to do. And this has probably been replaced too, because it's got a wire. It's got a wire tie around it. It is leaking a little bit, but it's as long as it doesn't leak outside the boot. I don't think they take the boots off during the inspection. They just look to see if they're dry. They look to see if the outside of the boot's dry. If you just clean it up, if it is leaking a little bit, just clean it up really good before you take it in. I mean, if it's leaking really bad, you should replace it. But I mean, if you got a high mileage car and you're trying to do it in a budget, you can't replace everything. Only the stuff that's really bad safety issues. So yeah, it's probably, seal's probably leaking a little bit, but just clean it up. This is one thing that they'll really fault you for in a, which I can't blame them. Can you see that? It's the power steering. The power steering pump. 9 times out of 10, it's not the power steering pump. You know, you have 30 days for the inspection. You probably should, you know, before the 30 days start, you should probably clean this power steering pump off and make sure it isn't the pump. 9 times out of 10, it's just the low pressure hose going into the pump, or either that or the other hose coming back. You know, and all you have to do is clean it up and replace the hose and refill the reservoir. You know, but I didn't know that. I took a car through and they got me for that. I was pretty sure it was a hose, but I just replaced the pump. I didn't want to have to go through it again. And they really don't care that much about leaking, like, as long as it's not creating a big puddle. But not so much like oil pan leaks or anything like that. As long as it, like I said, as long as it's not making a big puddle. So that looks pretty good. And the one thing you never want to do is you never want to be anywhere around the power steering rack with the motor running, because that can put more pressure when you turn the steering wheel. It's bone breaking pressure if you get caught in between something. So we're just going to slide the new boot on. I put both of the wire ties on both ends. The other wire tie actually was I don't know, I guess I could have gotten, if I was like had this car on a rack or something, a lift, I probably could have gotten it on there, but laying on my back and had my hands, it just, the wire tie was too small, and I used a longer one and just cut it. So now we got to put this end back on. And don't forget to put your lock nut on there. If you're just replacing the ball joint in, you don't need to take the lock nut off. But if you have to replace the boot, you have to take the lock nut off. What was it, 20 turns? I have to rewind my video and see how many it was. But I think it was 20. So we'll say that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I don't know if I turned the whole shaft. That last one, probably not. And then this has to go back down in here. And I'm not gonna, tomorrow I'm doing the inner CV joint, so I'm not going to tighten down the tie rod in. Let me see if I can at least get it. I got to get it in enough that I can thread it. Let's get this just in. Can you hear that crazy bird? It's a woodpecker. He keeps pecking on my house. My house is all aluminum. I always chase him away, and him or her is mad. And every time I'm out in the yard, the woodpecker lets me know it. Next, you want to torque down the castle nut and put a cotter pin in. And there's the cotter pin installed. And now we'll tighten down the tie rod in. This is one of the few times you'll see me using a crescent wrench. Crescent wrenches are basically for plumbing, not for auto mechanics. So you want to put a wrench on this, and since you're turning it backwards, so turn it to the left to tighten it. That's good. And there's the other tie around the. There's the other tie around the zip tie around the other end of the boot. There's my new boot. Inner boot.